You watched the same thing I did. What started as a competitive game turned into a sequence of failures for the Chiefs' defense on third down. And that's what cost them momentum. Right up front, this isn't about one missed tackle or one unlucky slip. It's about a repeatable pattern we saw all night, where creative blitz designs weren't matched by quick pressure. And when the rush failed, the back end had already rotated itself into holes that opposing quarterbacks could exploit. That pattern shows up in a few ways: corners giving inside leverage on obvious blitzes, safeties rotating away from the immediate underneath space, and linebackers or ends ending up in the same gap instead of creating a free rusher. All things that allowed the Cowboys to convert repeatedly on manageable third downs. You saw the same personnel names keep coming up in the clip you sent: Trent McDuffie in one-on-one matchups, Shamari Connor and Jalen Watson getting pulled into weird leverage spots, and when a blitz doesn't get home, those leverage mistakes become match-winning throws for the offense. The bigger problem is that the game plan handed Dak Prescott answers. When the Chiefs showed exotic pressure or dropped defensive ends into zones, Dallas simply adjusted pre-snap or got the ball out quickly to the vacated area. That's a scheme problem that becomes an execution problem in seconds. I'll walk you through the 3 third-down sequences that encapsulate that failure, break down the coaching choices versus the technique breakdowns, and then give a clear verdict on what's fixable by Wednesday practice and what's a longer-term personnel or schematic worry. If you want this channel to keep doing film work like this, hit that like button and help us reach 6,000 subscribers. Every subscribe helps. Quick poll for the comments. Was this mainly a scheme problem or a personnel problem? Tell me your take below, and then say which play I should break down first. Let's walk the tape together and break down 3 third-down sequences from that Dallas game that make the problem crystal clear. I'll keep this tight so you can picture the exact beats and why each one opened up in the way it did. First play, obvious blitz look. Chiefs bring pressure and even generate a free rusher early in the game. But later on, the same concept doesn't get home, and the corner on the blitz side gives inside leverage. That's 3rd and 8, where CeeDee Lamb works an out route against Trent McDuffie. Dak identifies the blitz, checks, and finds that inside window because McDuffie is aligned or playing inside leverage instead of forcing Lamb outside. The design should have produced pressure and a disrupted throw, but when the rush doesn't get home, the coverage rotations leave an underneath lane wide open, and Dak throws a perfectly placed ball to the sideline. Second play, a cover 1 robber look that initially looks sound, but the underneath connection fails because a rotated safety and a linebacker dropping into a carrying zone create a "who's got this" moment. That 3rd and short sequence, where the defense tries to force a throwaway or a tackle for short yardage, turns into a completion because a defensive back, called out in the clip, picks up movement and gets dragged out of position, while the linebacker who should fill the short zone hesitates or chases the quarterback instead of staying in the lane. That split second of lost responsibility is the difference between a stop and a first down. Third play, the 4th down, 3rd and 3 sequence where the Chiefs show a complicated stunt. 2 players loop, 1 drops into an apex zone, and the linebacker vacates to the flat. And Dak simply throws to the vacated man in the flat for an easy conversion. This one is a coaching decision problem more than a single-player mistake. The stunt gives Dak the answer, and he executes the simple throw. Across these examples, there are repeating themes. Point 1. When you show exotic pressure, you either have to get a quick free rusher or you must keep the back end simple and responsible. You can't rotate 6 players and expect the QB not to find the soft spot if the rush is late. 2. Technique matters. On obvious blitzes, corners must jam and take away inside releases instead of yielding the leverage that creates the natural throwing lane. And 3. Gap discipline in the rushers is non-negotiable. 2 guys in the same gap, or 1 rusher occupying the same space. Where a blitzer was expected to arrive kills the plan. I know you noticed the same recurring names I did: McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Shamari Connor, Chris Jones, Jaden Hicks, Nick Bolton. And it's not that all of those players are failing on their own. It's that their roles are being put into fragile spots by rotations that rely on pressure arriving. Before I give a verdict on who was outplayed versus who was schemed into a bad spot, tell me in the comments, which of these 3 plays would you rewind and coach differently? Comment the play number and 1 tweak you'd make. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to help us reach 6,000 subscribers so we can keep doing this film work. Hit subscribe now, and I'll break down the next sequence even deeper. Here's the verdict, plain and simple. It's not one thing. It's a harmful cocktail of schematic ambition plus technique and execution lapses that turned otherwise workable calls into easy completions for Dallas. Start with the schematic side. The Chiefs showed a lot of exotic pressure and multi-man rotations that are absolutely fine when you get a quick free rusher. But those designs assume immediate win-win results up front. When Chris Jones, Jaden Hicks, or whoever is supposed to be the free rusher doesn't get there on time, the back end, which has already rotated safeties, shifted corners, and dropped defensive ends into apex zones, is left chasing seams and handing the quarterback an obvious answer. That's a PK coaching design risk. You can only rotate that many pieces if you protect the underneath area or if the pass rush is virtually guaranteed to arrive. And in this game, KC didn't check that box often enough. Now, technique and fundamentals. On obvious blitzes, corners must jam and push the timing off the route, not yield inside leverage, and let CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens settle into the soft spot. We saw corners and backups filling bigger roles, give too much inside ground on plays where the IDE blitz was visible. That's a timing and hand placement failure that kills the plan. Linebackers and secondary players also had responsibility fades. Linebackers hesitating to occupy the short, underneath lanes or abandoning their gap assignments to chase the QB left huge check-down windows. And on the interior, 2 players too often occupied the same rush lane or misread a stunt, which neutralized the pressure and converted a design disruption into a routine completion. Who bears the blame? Coaching and play calling get top-level responsibility because the scheme chose to become complex without contingency. Chris Jones and Jaden Hicks get partial blame for not consistently winning their matchups or for overlapping gaps. And a few DBs, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Shamari Connor in the film you sent, deserve scrutiny for leverage and coverage discipline on key snaps. But don't make the mistake of branding everyone as bad. Many of these plays are correctable with focused practice and smarter deployment. Short-term, Spags and the staff should simplify third down calls on obvious blitz downs, either commit to a true pressure package with fewer rotations and more clear man coverage behind it, or dial back the exotic drops and play tighter underneath coverage when pressure is only schematic, not guaranteed. Emphasize jam technique pre-snap for corners on blitz looks. Force linebackers to be the flat underneath anchors instead of freeway chasers. And run a few practice scripts where 2-gap discipline and loop timing are trained until they're automatic. Medium-term, clean up rush gap assignments. Don't have 2 rushers target the same gap. And consider limiting how often rotational apex drops are used unless the personnel matchups look favorable. Long-term personnel depth matters. If backups are repeatedly placed into high-leverage man spots, that's a roster concern you address in roster construction or situational packages. Bottom line for you as a fan: this was a fixable mix of scheme and execution, not a terminal collapse. The staff needs to simplify and reteach fundamentals quickly, and several players need to tidy up technique. Now, I want your quick take. Yes or no? Should Spags simplify third down blitz calls immediately, or stick with the creative packages and trust the rush will start arriving again? Vote yes, simplify, or no, keep creative in the comments. And tell me one player you trust to make the immediate correction. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to help us reach 6,000 subscribers so we can keep breaking down film like this. Hit subscribe now, and I'll keep doing this kind of analysis for every Chiefs game. The encouraging news for you as a Chiefs fan is that none of these issues demand a full defensive overhaul. They demand clarity, discipline, and thoughtful deployment. All things a veteran staff can correct quickly. Short-term fixes start with alignment and leverage. When Kansas City shows pressure, corners must align with firm inside leverage and use their hands to disrupt the first step of the route. That single action buys the blitz an extra second and forces the quarterback to progress away from the obvious hot target. The staff can reinforce this immediately in practice with controlled jam drills that pair corners with receivers who specialize in timing routes. You don't need to change personnel to clean that up. You just need a reminder of technique and intent. The next short-term tweak involves simplifying pressure assignments. Spagnuolo can still call aggressive looks, but there needs to be a distinction between the all-in blitzes and the simulated pressures he loves. On true blitz downs, the team should either send the expected bodies or disguise from a simpler shell, so defensive backs aren't asked to rotate into unfamiliar zones with moving parts everywhere. When the call is a simulated pressure, simplify the rotation. Don't drop a defensive end and a safety simultaneously, while also stunting two interior linemen. That kind of mechanical chaos works only when the free rusher arrives on time. If your front isn't getting home, the disguise becomes a liability instead of an advantage. On the personnel side, you're looking for steps forward from two specific groups: the young defensive backs and the interior defensive line. For the DBs, that means playing tighter coverage on early downs and recognizing route stems faster. Trent McDuffie is reliable, but others, particularly those asked to play in the slot or rotate between nickel and safety roles, must shrink their cushion and trust the scheme. These are manageable adjustments, not talent gaps. Up front, players like Chris Jones and the rotational linemen need to maintain gap discipline so the stunts actually work as designed. When two rushers hit the same lane, it erases the pressure and exposes the secondary. Correcting that is about communication and timing, not overhauling. The line, medium term, the Chiefs should adjust how heavily they rely on exotic pressure against top-tier timing quarterbacks. It may be smarter to lean more on coverage disguises, pattern matching, and shallow zone defenders sitting in hot lanes rather than constantly chasing pressure that isn't arriving consistently. That doesn't mean Spagnuolo abandons creativity, but he can sequence it more selectively. Hit the quarterback early with variety, then force him to play honest looks late in the game once he's been conditioned to expect pressure. Long-term, roster planning matters. If backups are consistently being asked to fill technically demanding roles, then General Manager Brett Veach should evaluate whether the depth pieces match the system's complexity. You can still run Spagnuolo's scheme, but the staff may need to tailor certain packages to the personnel on the field, rather than forcing every player into the same responsibilities. That kind of strategic alignment can turn a shaky stretch into a confident unit heading into December and January. For you, the takeaway is straightforward. The Chiefs have fixable problems, not foundational ones. Technique, communication, and smarter packaging will stabilize the defense quickly. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments. Name one player you trust to make the adjustment this week and tell me why. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure you like the video and subscribe to help us reach 6,000 subscribers, so we can bring you more Chiefs news and film analysis every week. Stay locked with Total Chiefs News. Hail Chiefs!